What's up, everybody? Every quarter, JP Morgan puts out their guide to the markets. It is a presentation with quite a lot of data. They have a lot of slides with information that I find interesting. It's mostly focusing on the US stock market, but also stuff on international, on bonds, economic information like unemployment, consumer defaults. I always think it's useful to look at, so that's what we're going to go through today. I know I haven't made a video in a few weeks, but definitely, I can tell you that at the end of this month, it's going to be getting a little busy on this channel. And that's because we're going to have a lot of earnings reports that I'm going to want to go over. Within the next 2 weeks, pretty much all the major health insurance companies are going to report: UNH, Elevance, Molina. Towards the end of the month, we'll have Fiserv and PayPal. Also, I want to take a look at Charter. So as earnings season ramps up, we will definitely be making videos on a lot of the companies that we follow here. If that sounds interesting and you get value out of the video, then subscribe to the channel. If you want to join my Discord or grab my Google Sheets template for analyzing stocks, then consider following me on Patreon. Now, let's get into it. And they always start here with a price graph of the S&P 500. We see right now we're a little over 7,500, 7,500 on the S&P. Pretty much all-time highs, but it's more relevant to look at the price relative to some fundamental earnings, cash flow, something like that. And we see right now trading at a little over 20 times forward earnings. I don't always love the use of forward earnings. Analysts often overestimate earnings. I think actually historically, forward earnings overestimates actual realized earnings by 10 to 12% or something like that. It's a pretty significant number. But there's a flaw with any metric. The downside of using something like trailing 12-month earnings is that, when we buy something, we're buying it for its future earnings power, its future cash flow. If you're looking at the trailing 12 months, you're driving looking in the rear view mirror. So no metric's perfect. And when you just look at price to forward earnings, the S&P 500 looks a little expensive, not crazy expensive. Over the past 30 years, this is about a standard deviation above the average. If we looked over the past 50, 60, or even, 100 years of the S&P 500, then the average price to earnings ratio would be a lot lower than this 17 times that we've seen over the past 30 years. So by this measure, the market certainly does look expensive. We've never really been up here other than the dot-com bubble era and also in 2021. And while that might not bode well for the future, the other side of the argument would be that, profit margins have grown a ton. Also, the market nowadays, it's mostly in these tech companies that are a lot higher quality, better balance sheets. So the market deserves to trade at a higher multiple now than it did in the past. Still, when the market is expensive, the expected future returns tend to be lower. And that's just because, as we refer to on this channel a decent amount, price is related to both risk and reward. If nothing fundamentally changes about an asset, like let's say I'm just buying the S&P 500, if tomorrow I snap my fingers and the price of the S&P 500 is 5,000 instead of 7,500, then the risk reward tomorrow at 5,000 would be significantly better than today. Both lower risk and greater reward. Now, it might not feel that way because in order for the price of the S&P 500 to get to 5,000, you're going to have a serious correction. In that moment, risk is going to feel high. Right now, when the market is just going up, you don't really feel like there's a lot of risk. So, counterintuitively, our innate perception of risk reward is not that great. Nevertheless, back to this chart, when you look at the market when the forward price to earnings ratio has been about where it is right now, about 20 times forward earnings, then the expected forward 5-year annualized returns is mid-single digits. Let's say this is about 5-6%. The forward 1-year returns, a lot more scattered. Valuation is a very poor predictor of returns over the next year. Essentially, what that just means is it's really hard to time market moves. You can't time a market crash or, a market turning around. But over a longer time horizon, you can be a bit more confident in statements about the risk reward of the market. Now, right now, when you buy the market, you're really making a huge bet on a small number of companies. We see right now the top 10 companies in the S&P 500, they make up about 38% of the market cap. They were actually over 40% of the market cap recently. That's just a massive amount. It's a concentration we really have never seen before. So the S&P 500 today is really a huge bet on, Nvidia, Google, Apple, Microsoft. Micron is now in here. These companies may do great going forward, but when you're buying the S&P 500 today, you're not really buying a diversified basket of companies in the way that you might think. That's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just something to be aware of. Semiconductors in particular have had an incredible run. The hyperscalers actually are, interestingly enough, down year to date. Software companies on the right here, we see down significantly year to date. Not surprising for anyone who's been following what's been going on. One of the craziest numbers here is, you see up here, percent of the S&P 500. Semiconductors now make up almost 20% of the S&P 500. That is massive. And yes, that's because earnings have just exploded. We see here earnings growth for semiconductors year over year, 100% growth in earnings year over year. There's massive demand for these products, and the price of chips, memory, everything has gone through the roof. But what perhaps some investors who are maybe newer to looking at this sector might not realize is, semiconductors have typically been very cyclical. I'm just going to jump ahead in their presentation to this slide right here. CapEx from the AI hyperscalers. This CapEx is essentially becoming the revenue of the semiconductor companies, and effectively it's flowing down into the earnings, into the bottom line of those semiconductor businesses. As CapEx has exploded, so have the earnings of NVIDIA, Micron, all these companies. It seems that the general belief of the market is CapEx here is just going to keep going up and up and up. The spend on AI is just going to increase, and that very well may be the case. I don't have a strong opinion here, but there's definitely a risk that the CapEx growth here will be similar to, the CapEx cycles in other sectors like fiber or electric vehicles, or, pretty much pick any transformative technology you want. You have these big CapEx booms, and then the CapEx cycle turns. If this investment drops, if it goes back down like investment cycles often do, what do you think is going to happen to the revenue growth for Micron and NVIDIA? You're certainly not going to see 100% year-over-year growth, I'll tell you that. So while I would never bet against NVIDIA, I would never buy puts on the company. I think it's an incredible business. For me, I'm just sitting on the sidelines here. I'm not going to own NVIDIA and Micron at these prices. It's not for me. If I miss out, I miss out. I'm going to skip over a bunch of slides and just go to this data on the economy here. I'll link this full presentation in the description if you want to go through. There are so many slides here that we're not going to look at. So if you want to look at small versus mid versus large cap, or, valuations by sector here, then maybe that will be interesting to you. Maybe one thing I'll just point out on this slide is the forward PE ratio by sector. We see for almost every sector, the forward PE is greater than the 20-year average, which basically means that the sectors look expensive relative to history, but the one exception is energy. Energy is still trading at, 12 times forward PE. You wouldn't expect energy to trade for a similar multiple to, say, tech, for example, but this is still a little cheaper than its 20-year average. Now, jumping back to the economy, we have seen that the unemployment rate has been picking up a little bit over the past few years. Job increases, they've been coming down, although we do see that turning around a little bit recently. Inflation was down to about 2 to 3%, but obviously past few months that's been picking up because of energy. Oil prices have pulled back from their peak, so I would expect this to come down a bit in the next few months. But still, energy prices likely, I think, to remain a little bit elevated. The dollar has been pretty flat year to date, even though over the past few years, the dollar has been coming down. You see that the dollar typically has these very long up and down cycles. If you're someone who's looking at foreign companies, international stocks, emerging market stocks, or even companies in the US that get a lot of their revenue from overseas, then a declining dollar is likely a positive for you if all you're concerned about is what your investments are worth in dollar terms. They have this rather ominous slide here on the federal budget. We see that we're paying over $1 trillion a year just in the interest on our debt. We're essentially incapable of balancing our budget. Just a generation or two ago, we used to be a very low debt country. In terms of GDP, our debt was, between 20 to 40% for a lot of this time. Now the federal debt is essentially 100% of GDP, and it's projected to go up. In fact, I would say it's inevitable that this is going to increase. It's not going to spell doom anytime soon, but inevitably, yes, I think that this will be an issue for the US. Now, this slide I think is interesting. It shows consumer confidence, and it relates that to stock market returns. Historically, periods of low consumer confidence have often been good times to invest, and periods of high consumer confidence have often been towards peaks or, bad times to be invested. In spite of the market today being close to an all-time high, consumer confidence is actually extremely low. found that interesting, certainly not what I would expect. But in spite of the market being towards all-time highs, there's actually a lot of stocks, especially a lot of consumer brands that are towards their lows. So maybe this is just more a sign of the dispersion in the, I guess, more consumer-focused sectors and the AI-related sectors. Now, looking at the rest of the world, this is something I always find interesting, which is just what do valuations look like in different markets? And while the US looks expensive, most other markets also look a little bit expensive relative to their 20-year averages. Maybe not so much as the US, but still a little bit elevated, with the exception of emerging markets. I think there are a decent number of opportunities in emerging markets right now. My largest holding in my own portfolio is actually a company in Kazakhstan. They'll report earnings in the beginning of August, so of course we're going to look at them on the channel when that happens. Now, again, as I said, there are so many more slides in here that we could go through, but I don't want this to be a hugely long video. I think we've hit the most important things. In summary, what's the takeaway and what does it mean for our investments, for maybe the S&P 500 as a whole? For me, I think the S&P 500 is expensive. It's not crazy expensive, but I don't think the risk reward is very good. That's just my opinion. I'm not predicting a crash. I have no special ability to time the market. I would just rather pick the individual businesses that I want to hold in my portfolio. I think many people talk about the overall market multiple being a little high, being a little stretched, but not many people talk about the fact that the earnings themselves could be a little bit high, a little bit inflated. The immense amount of CapEx from the hyperscalers, that just flows into revenue and thus earnings of other companies in the S&P 500, of mostly the semiconductor businesses. This makes the overall earnings growth of the S&P 500 look really good. But the risk here is that that turns in the future. Again, I'm not predicting a crash, but for me, I don't think that the risk reward of the S&P 500 is very good. And as far as what I do with my money, I currently have no exposure to the S&P 500 as an index. I own certain companies within the S&P 500, and I certainly think that there are plenty of opportunities in the market. But I don't like the broader market right now. That's just my opinion. And as far as looking at individual businesses, we'll get back to that soon on the channel. So if you got value out of this video, subscribe. Let me know what you think of the market of the S&P 500's valuation right now. If you agree or disagree with me, put that down in a comment below. And I hope to see you all in another video.